you don't need to engage with every awful thing that is going on at this moment. We're not equipped as human beings to be able to keep up with the most horrible atrocity that has occurred this week. You have to care for the world in your own unique way and not be swayed by what other people think that you should do with your time and energy. The world does not rest on your shoulders, but we're responsible for taking care of our corner of it. Somebody's misunderstanding of you is not the truth of you and is not the truth of your morality. It's not the truth of what you care about and who you are. Hey, it's Nyx. This is your new moon reading for the tropical new moon in Leo and sidereal new moon in Cancer. I'll be following the Cancer sidereal placements, but it all overlaps, so there you have it. And by the way, if this reading resonates with you, you like my style of doing readings, then definitely subscribe to the channel, leave a like. And if you want to receive this reading 2 days early, join my Patreon. More benefits will be coming soon. Anyway, let's get into the reading. So I think a main theme of this new moon, with the sun, moon, and Mercury all conjunct each other in Cancer, Mars and Venus both in Leo. What I'm getting from this is that we're trying to find new ways of being able to nurture others while still retaining our own sense of self, our own individuality, our own sovereignty. How can we support others and how can we support people in our own way, our own specific way, without having to bend to the whims of everybody else around us who think that they have any kind of say over what you should be doing with your time and energy and your strength, honestly. Your skills, all that fun stuff. So, another thing that is showing up here are these squares to Uranus. Sun, moon, and Mercury are all square Uranus, and Venus and Mars are trine Uranus, and Saturn is also square Uranus, and also with some oppositions to Saturn. What this says to me is that there are a lot of new insights that conflict with the previous way of doing things and the previous way of solving various social, economic, political issues. With Jupiter still in the very beginning of sidereal Aquarius and both Saturn and Pluto retrograde in sidereal Capricorn, Pluto is actually at 0 degrees Capricorn during the time of this full moon, and it will actually, since it's retrograde, be backtracking into Sagittarius real quickly so that we can kind of reconceptualize the ideological foundation behind the world that we are trying to build together. With these squares to Saturn, there's also some restraint in sharing these new ideas that you might be exploring ideas that maybe are seen as harmful or unhelpful, but may actually be the way forward. We don't know yet. So there's some restraint in expressing thoughts, and there has been for a while because of this vocal minority of people who believe that their way of doing things, their way of saying things, their way of seeing things is the only just and correct and righteous way to do those things. I see this playing out most strongly among people who are speaking out against online harassment campaigns, also known as
cancel culture.
I call them online accountability spectacles. I also call them, they can also become harassment or smear campaigns. So it really just depends on who's participating and why they're participating and what outcome it leads to. The most just and righteous call for accountability can also be hijacked by people who just want to see someone's life burn. And I think that we, in this sense, in this specific part of life and interacting with each other and having a global community with each other, I think that this is being reconsidered, the way that we go about this sort of thing and the things that we allow to enter into the space through the guise of something good. And the fear of speaking out against certain things, again, in this example, the accountability spectacle is real. I've seen plenty of anarchist leftists called pastel Q. I don't know if this video is gonna be restricted in any way if I like say the name of the group, but I think you know what I'm talking about if you have been paying attention to this anything. But they're being called pastel Q for speaking out against this practice that leads to the mental, emotional, financial, and social degradation of another human being. Whether the call for accountability is earned or not. You don't want people to think that you're on the side of the enemy just because you're beginning to explore new ways of doing things after seeing how ineffective certain methods of I can't think of the word, I can't think of the term, methods of trying to solve problems within whatever area it is that you personally are most focused on or most invested in. Like I said, with Pluto about to re-enter sidereal Sagittarius, it's a time of us reevaluating the core beliefs that are going to uphold the foundation of the world that we're trying to build. And it's going to be a pretty quick readjustment period because Pluto will probably only be in there for a few degrees. But once Pluto goes direct again and then re-enters Capricorn, then I think that a lot of us are going to have a better idea of effective solutions that will cause less harm to people who honestly, in many cases, not all, don't deserve what they experience as a result of something taken in bad faith, misconstrued, or just something dumb they said as a teenager in 2013. Speaking of taking things in good or bad faith, I'll get into that a little bit more later. Mercury and Mars are both opposing Jupiter, which can signify the polarized black and white thinking, going to extremes in action and in communication. And with the squares to Uranus, Uranus being new insights, rapid changes in thought and social change. Depending on where you are in your thought process and your reconsideration process, it might be wise to hold back on expressing something that you might regret later. Not in the sense that people will be upset by what you might have to say, but in the sense that the thoughts that are kind of circulating in your mind might not be as fully fledged out as you would like them to be in order to communicate them effectively. But it is so good to share what you're thinking with someone that you trust to help you speed that process along so that you can be one of the people who are kind of ushering in this new way of doing things. I've often seen this polarized thinking and pendulum swing of thought. I've often seen this in cases where people are talking about why they left the left. But what really seems to happen in a lot of these situations, not all, is that a lot of people just trade one set of rigid ideology with another. I just watched Chelsea Fagan's interview with Lindsay Ellis on the financial diet, and I laughed when Chelsea said something about these kinds of shifts in someone's political identity, I suppose. She said something along the lines of,
I was canceled and now I believe in trickle-down economics.
I just think it's so weird, and it makes sense. Like, if it seems like everyone from one side essentially wants you to be unalived, at least effectively, or at least with regards to your presence in the social space, and then there's other people who have their arms open to them, like, yeah, maybe then they'll kind of... I don't blame people for their survival strategies, as much as I might disagree with the way that they play out. Humans are a tribal species. We go where we're accepted. So take the time to evaluate whether you're forming your own thoughts about things, like your own nuanced takes on things, or if you're just trading in an old set of opinions for one that you haven't adopted before. But with these oppositions and squares to Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, I think it's really important to remember that when letting go of the old way of doing things, we're not changing much of anything if we just flip from one side of the coin to the other. You know, like, we're just perpetuating the same awful cycle. Because if you go from being supportive of the existence of these accountability spectacles to thinking that they're entirely wrong and thinking that the people who are participating in them are also wrong, and then you talk about how bad the people who cancel others are, I mean, you're allowed to feel the way you feel, you're allowed to think the way that you think, of course, but I do want to caution against letting that resentment and remorse of participating in the old way of doing things influence you to look down on the people who are still advocating for this type of social ritual. And again, this is just one example that I've been thinking a lot about lately, but this could be about anything that you are currently dealing with, thinking about. But I do think that this is something that is very much on the forefront of the mind of many people right now. And in that sense, thinking about these things, that's why I think it's so important to practice having compassion for yourself and forgiving yourself for being, I don't want to say the word misguided. There might be a better word to use in this situation, but for being misguided in the past and thinking that the end justifies the means. And by having that self-compassion and self-forgiveness, it can also make it more possible for you to interact with others who still think that it's okay to, for example, use strangers online as cathartic punching bags. And with these planets in Cancer, I think that we're being called to approach others with an open mind, benefit of the doubt, interpreting what someone is saying in good faith, having the trust that someone has come to their own opinions about things, not because they are necessarily ignorant about something, but because they just see different solutions to the same problem. Sometimes if someone has a solution or an idea of what will solve a problem, it might look like they just don't believe that the problem is there at all, but actually they may very well also see that problem, think that that problem is wrong and should be eliminated, but they just, from their experience, they think that there's a better way to go about solving that issue. Like, in most cases, it doesn't mean that that person is bad or that there's something wrong with them or that they're hateful, unless they are. Like, again, nuance. Be more open to nuance, to asking questions, to understanding why people have come to the conclusions that they have come to. Seek to understand rather than to convert or be converted. There is something that I read quite a while ago. It was in the context of veganism. It was about when people are in the pre-consideration phase and the post-consideration phase of something. And when someone has a different opinion to us, if someone thinks that one way of doing things is better than the other, you might think that they haven't considered our perspective yet, but they very well could have had the same perspective as you at one point, but then after some experiences that they've had, after information that they've taken in, they might have actually adopted this new perspective, this new opinion that you think that they haven't thought about, but they actually have. So that's something to keep in mind. So in the veganism example, when you're talking to someone who might eat meat or someone who might be a vegetarian but still consumes dairy, and if you happen to be a vegan and you think that they should also be one, you might try to convince them the reasons why they should become a vegan, but maybe they have their own reasons for why they think that the way that they're nourishing themselves, whatever. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but the same can be said for other issues as well. Like, for example, if we're going to get slightly controversial here, you might have been convinced at one point that in all cases, no matter the context or circumstances, if one person thinks that something is blank phobic, or the idea that even if only a handful of people within a marginalized community think that something is harmful, then it is. You might have believed those things before, but maybe things have changed. You've listened to more voices, most likely of that same marginalized group, for example, and realized like certain things are just too subjective. Certain things cannot be evaluated on, like, there's just so much more to it that is so subjective and can often be based on someone's trauma causing them to unintentionally interpret things in bad faith and therefore say that someone or something is harmful. I don't know if I'm expressing that in the way that I want to, but I hope that makes some sense. So you might have once believed that if something can be seen as blank phobic, then it is. At one point you might have believed that, but now you're more willing and able to understand the nuance inherent in that situation. There are some people who just try to look for the bad in every situation, and that's just a fact. and you don't know who's who when you're interacting with people online when it comes to how objective they're being. But there's been this emphasis on subjectivity of things, but so many of us are so messed up mentally and emotionally that I'm not gonna talk about that. Become soft. I think that this Cancer new moon is asking us to become soft rather than resentful. Express your frustration so that you don't bottle it up, but don't take it out on others if you can help it. Express what you feel in a constructive way, and then think about how you want to approach the world now that you've gotten more clear on what it is that you care about and what you actually think. Assume good intent, assume good faith, even if you disagree with somebody, or if a person is trying to get you to readopt an old ideology or way of interacting with the world. And lastly, before I get into the tarot reading, these Leo placements and Cancer placements together, I think they want us to ask ourselves, like, what are our unique gifts that we can share with the world? We can't make all of the problems of the world our responsibility. When we jump on a bandwagon, no matter how just and righteous this bandwagon is, no matter how urgent or noble the cause, we're pulled away from making a significant difference in the area of life that we are here right now at this moment we're pulled away from making a significant difference in our specific realm. You don't need to engage with every awful thing that is going on at this moment. We're not equipped as human beings to be able to keep up with the most horrible atrocity that has occurred this week. There are enough people available to deal with certain problems in the world, even if it might not always seem like it, but none of them are able to do what you are here to do, and you might not be able to do what they are here to do. This isn't about burying your head in the sand or only focusing on your specific thing or spiritual bypassing or anything like that. This is about recognizing what is and isn't your responsibility, recognizing what is and isn't going to fit on our already overloaded plate. You have to care for the world in your own unique way and not be swayed by what other people think that you should do with your time and energy. The world does not rest on your shoulders, but we're responsible for taking care of our corner of it. We can't carry the world together if we're all constantly moving from supporting one part of it to another, if that makes sense. You know, like if you have a whole bunch of people holding up one giant thing, and if that strength underneath that thing isn't evenly distributed, then it's going to collapse. So if we're all holding up this plate of the world, and you're over here, and there are people over here, and there's people who are all in the center, if we're all being pulled to focus on something that's over here, it's gonna tip over. And we're going to get burnt out, and we're not going to be effective in any way. So you can't be expected to show up or speak on every single thing that is going on. And to others, it might seem like you're ignoring that issue, but somebody's misunderstanding of you is not the truth of you, and is not the truth of your morality. It's not the truth of what you care about and who you are. So you don't have to constantly be on top of every single thing going on, no matter how many people try to convince you otherwise. So let's pull some cards. I want to get a better idea of how we can keep an open mind and an open heart while interacting with other people, while taking in new perspective, taking in new information, how we can retain our individuality and autonomy so that we can cooperate with others without feeling the need to mirror or become or appease them. Remaining sovereign while expressing empathy could be an example. And also like what we can keep in mind so that we can remain compassionate toward ourselves and others. So I'm not going to pull cards in any particular order. I just kind of want to see what comes out and take what we can from that. Two cards that just came out are King of Swords and King of Pentacles. And I think just basically those two are just about, again, remaining sovereign over our own domain, remaining sovereign over our own thoughts, opinions, ideas, beliefs. In my readings, I've been talking a lot about understanding what your core values are, because it's from those core values that you can operate rather than being swayed by whatever is the right side in popular discourse. When you know your values, then you know what to do. When you know that your values, the image that you have of yourself won't be so easily swayed by the perception of others, especially if you're not behaving in the way that they think that you should behave, even if you might not be doing anything wrong, or if they think that you need to do more, but you're already doing so much stuff behind the scenes in your own part of the world. And the King of Swords and King of Pentacles, I think that that is about being the lord of your space in the world, of what you are here to do. And also part of understanding your own values will really help you when others try to demand of you to defer your own thinking to other people. For example, in the discourse right now, and probably maybe in the past too, there's a lot of talk going on about whether or not tarot, just reading tarot in generally, is appropriative of Romani. I don't know if they're saying that it's appropriative of Romani culture, because the thing is, when I tried to seek out the information myself to see what actual Romani people were saying about this, I saw a lot of people saying that they didn't want tarot to be associated with Roma culture. I saw so many people saying that they wanted people to stop associating tarot with Romani culture. But there's this group of people, I guess, it seems like it's, even looking at the like Romani subreddit, people were talking about this one small group of people who are convincing everybody else that it's appropriative to read tarot if you're not Roma. Like, if you don't have your own values, and if you don't feel confident enough in your ability to seek out opposing perspectives and come to your own conclusion, then when you're told to listen to blank voices on a subject, and then you come across conflicting opinions within that group of people, what are you going to do if you don't know yourself, I guess, if I'm going to be vague about it. But I hope you understand what it is that I'm saying with that. Like, if you are in charge of your own decision-making process, you're just gonna be just like thrown about by the tides of other people's opinions on all kinds of different issues. And like, yes, in some situations, then in that case, it's like you don't have to come to a conclusion about something. Like, if there are some people who say that locks, if a white person has locks, then it's appropriative, but there are also other people in the same culture who think that it's not appropriative for white people to wear locks. And if you were never interested in wearing them in the first place, you don't have to have your own opinion on it. But if you're someone like me and you're reading tarot for yourself and for others, and if it's something that has brought so much value to your life and to the life of others, and then you hear people saying that it's wrong for you to be reading tarot, not because it can open a portal to the demon dimension, but because it's potentially harmful to a whole group of people, like, what do you do? And then if you see various different opinions on something, it's just a mess. Do you just throw away everything that has helped you up until this point? Like, in some situations, like, I don't know, like there's the whole issue with using sage, but like in some cases, yes, you probably should. Like, if you've bought bundles of white sage from Marshall's, I've literally seen them at Marshall's, maybe once you see all of the evidence and the reasons why you shouldn't be using it, yes, actually probably do give it away. But if it's something that's as, I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm not sitting here pretending to be from a culture that I'm not. I'm not sitting here wearing like clothing that gives this like vibe. If I'm wearing like a G-word outfit to try to like make myself look like a mysterious tarot reader, like that's wrong, yeah. But just to be here reading tarot for you and myself, like there are some groups that say that white people cannot read tarot, and there are some groups that say white people can read tarot. And really it's just completely arbitrary. That's the word that I'm thinking of. Like, there are just some things that are more arbitrary than others. Not that they're unimportant or that different perspectives on that thing are unimportant, but like, you have to be able to come to your own conclusions on certain things based on the information that you're taking in. I gotta hurry this up because I have a therapy session in like 25 minutes. So we have Death, the High Priestess, and Five of Wands. And again, I think it just comes back to our own inner knowing of things, our willingness to take in multiple perspectives and come to our own conclusions about things. Five of Wands here. So there's this book that was released recently called Scout Mindset by Julia Galef. And I hope I pronounced her last name correctly, but she talks about the scout mindset versus the warrior mindset or soldier mindset. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a difference between being rigid and firm about your beliefs and ideas of things versus being curious about things. And there are times when it's good to have a soldier mindset, and there are also times when having a soldier mindset is going to hold you back. She also talks about how sometimes the soldier mindset is perpetuated by whatever social circle that you are in. I don't remember exactly what she says about this, but sometimes adopting a soldier mindset is a survival strategy because you might have been raised, or you might currently just be in a social group that believes that if you don't have a firm stance on something, then there's something wrong with you, and you also have to definitely have the right stance on something. In that case, you might be ostracized for having a scout mindset, for being curious. And I think the conclusion that she made from that, I haven't listened to the audiobook in a while, but I think she said something about how in some cases it's better to find another group of people who will support your scout mindset. I've been seeing a lot of spaces online opening up lately of people coming together and talking about their different opinions on things. Brittany King comes to mind. She considers her platform to be a bipartisan space for sharing ideas, and so many great conversations have come from the people that she's featured on her channel. I highly recommend it. And I don't want to rush the end of this reading too much because I do have an appointment pretty soon, but I guess what I want to say with these cards, King of Swords, King of Pentacles, Death, the High Priestess, Five of Wands, I think that it's basically saying, like, understand your values so that you can approach topics with an open mind. When we understand our values, when we understand what it is that we want to change in the world for the better, it allows us to remain curious so that we are more willing to let go of old ways of trying to solve issues once we realize that they are not effective. And once we realize that they are not bringing about the outcome that we were hoping for. And by remaining firm on your decision to be open-minded, that might create a rift with some people. But I think that ultimately it'll help lead you to a new group of people who are willing to have civil conversations with each other about things, because so many of us, the majority of us, care about the same thing, but have very different perspectives on them. And it doesn't make somebody more right or wrong than another person. I will release the tarot readings for all 12 signs in the next couple of days. I hope that this reading was useful for you. If you have any questions or thoughts or just want to talk about what's going on for you, leave that in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you like this content, and I will see you soon.